The mighty legions march across the ancient lands, their footsteps echoing through time. Welcome to a journey that will take us back to one of the most powerful military forces ever created, the Roman Legion. I'm your host from Legacy of Empires, and today we'll unlock the secrets of an empire that changed warfare forever. Picture this: thousands of soldiers moving as one, their armor gleaming under the Mediterranean sun, their discipline unmatched in the ancient world. This isn't just another history lesson. This is the story of how Rome's legendary warriors shaped the world we live in today. You see, when we think of ancient Rome, we often imagine gladiators and grand colosseums. But it was the legion, Rome's revolutionary military machine, that truly built an empire spanning 3 continents. And at its heart were 3 distinct categories of warriors, each with their own crucial role to play. The Roman legion wasn't just about brute force. It was about strategy, innovation, and a level of organization that wouldn't be seen again for over 1,000 years after Rome's fall. Their military system was so effective that its influence can still be seen in modern armies today. From the scorching deserts of North Africa to the misty forests of Britain, these legions carved out the greatest empire the ancient world had ever seen. And today, we're going to discover how they did it. If you're fascinated by the secrets of the past that shaped our present, you're in the right place. This is your invitation to join us on an epic journey through history. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to Legacy of Empires to embark on more incredible historical adventures. Hit that notification bell to never miss a battle, empire, or mystery from ancient civilizations. Get ready to discover how a group of soldiers became legends and how their legacy still echoes through time. This is the story of the Roman Legion, and it begins right now. The Roman Legion wasn't just an army, it was a masterpiece of military organization. Imagine a massive force of 4,800 men divided with the precision of a well-oiled machine. Each legion was split into smaller units, working together like pieces of an intricate puzzle. But what made this system truly remarkable was its 3 distinct categories of soldiers. Think of it as a 3-layered defense, each layer more experienced and formidable than the last. At the front were the Hastati, the youngest and most eager warriors. Behind them stood the Principes, seasoned fighters in their prime. And finally, the veterans, the elite Triarii, formed the last line of defense. You know, there's an interesting saying that survived from ancient Rome. It has come down to the Triarii. Romans would use this phrase when things got really desperate, because the Triarii were only called into battle as a last resort. Imagine how nerve-wracking it must have been for soldiers and citizens alike when they saw these veterans stepping forward. It meant things had gotten seriously dire. The genius of this system lay in its flexibility. The Romans didn't just throw all their soldiers into battle at once. Instead, they used these 3 lines like waves in an ocean. The fresh Hastati would engage first, and if they couldn't break the enemy, they'd fall back through gaps in the Principes line. If the Principes also failed, only then would the legendary Triarii rise from their kneeling position. Yes, they actually waited on one knee, ready to spring into action. Each category had its own distinct equipment and fighting style. The Hastati carried the famous pilum, a heavy javelin designed not just to kill, but to disable enemy shields. The Principes were armed similarly, but had better armor, while the Triarii used longer spears and fought in a different style altogether, reminiscent of the ancient Greek phalanx. This wasn't just a random arrangement. It was carefully designed to ensure that raw enthusiasm was balanced with experience, that youthful energy was tempered by veteran wisdom. The Romans had essentially created a living, breathing combat school, where younger soldiers could learn from those who had survived countless battles. And here's something fascinating. This structure remained largely unchanged for over 2 centuries. In a world without phones, computers, or even standardized training manuals, the Romans managed to maintain this incredibly complex system across an empire that spanned 3 continents. Now that's what I call organizational skills. This 3-tiered system would eventually evolve into the cohort legion during the Marian reforms, but its basic principles of organization and discipline would continue to influence military thinking for centuries to come. In fact, many modern military units still use a similar concept of having different levels of experienced soldiers working together. Let's talk about the Hastati, the young lions of the Roman legion. Picture yourself as an 18-year-old Roman citizen, standing in formation for the first time. Your new armor, still uncomfortably stiff, your heart pounding with a mixture of pride and fear. This was the reality for the Hastati, the youngest and most inexperienced soldiers in the Roman military machine. These young warriors were typically between 18 and 25 years old, drawn from Rome's lower middle class. They had to provide their own equipment, which often meant relatively simple armor, a bronze breastplate if they could afford it, or sometimes just a small circular shield and a bronze helmet. But don't let their basic equipment fool you. What they lacked in protection, they made up for with determination and energy. The Hastati carried 2 weapons that would become legendary: the gladius, a short sword perfect for stabbing in close combat, and the pilum, a heavy javelin that was one of Rome's secret weapons. Here's a fascinating detail about the pilum. It was designed to bend on impact. Yes, you heard that right. The shaft would deliberately bend after hitting its target, making the shield it stuck in useless and impossible to throw back. Now that's what I call Roman engineering at its finest. Being first in line during battle might sound like a terrible job, but it served multiple purposes. First, it gave these young soldiers invaluable combat experience. Second, their youthful energy and enthusiasm made them perfect for that initial clash of arms. And third, though it might sound harsh, it meant that if casualties were taken, the legion hadn't lost its most experienced fighters. The Hastati fought in a checkerboard formation, with each line able to retreat through the gaps in the line behind them, if needed. Imagine the pressure of knowing that your performance could affect not just your own survival, but the success of the entire legion. These young soldiers had to master not only fighting skills, but also complex maneuvers and strict discipline. A little-known fact about the Hastati is that their name actually means spearmen, though by the time of the Roman Republic, they no longer primarily used spears. This is a reminder of how the Roman military constantly evolved, adapting its tactics and equipment to meet new challenges. These young warriors lived by a strict code of honor. Retreating wasn't considered shameful if done as part of the battle plan. In fact, it was expected. The real test of a Hastatus wasn't just his bravery in charging forward, but his discipline in falling back in good order when necessary. This way, the Romans turned what could have been a weakness, their inexperience, into a strategic advantage. Many of Rome's greatest generals started their careers as Hastati. They learned not just how to fight, but how to be part of something bigger than themselves. In many ways, the Hastati represented the future of Rome itself, young, ambitious, and ready to prove themselves on the battlefield of history. For these young soldiers, every battle was a chance to gain experience, to prove their worth, and perhaps most importantly, to earn their place among the more prestigious ranks of the Principes. They were the first step in a military career that could lead to glory, honor, and if they were skilled and lucky enough, survival to become veterans themselves. Now, let's meet the backbone of the Roman legion, the Principes. These weren't just soldiers. They were the prime warriors of Rome, men in their physical prime, typically between 25 and 30 years old. The word Principes literally means first ones, and although they fought in the second line, this name reveals something fascinating about their history. They were originally the first line of battle in earlier Roman armies. These warriors were the perfect blend of strength and experience, Having survived their time as Hastati, they'd learned the hard lessons of combat, but hadn't yet reached the veteran status of the Triarii. Think of them as the middle management of ancient warfare, experienced enough to make good decisions, yet still young enough to execute them with vigor. The Principes were typically wealthier than the Hastati, which meant better equipment. They wore chainmail armor called lorica hamata, carried larger shields, and had high-quality weapons. Here's an interesting detail. Their chainmail armor contained between 30 and 40,000 individual rings, each one linked by hand. Imagine the craftsmanship involved in creating just one of these protective suits. Their role in battle was crucial. When the Hastati needed to retreat, the Principes would stand firm, ready to engage the enemy with practiced skill. Their formation would open up, allowing the younger soldiers to fall back through their ranks, then close again like a well-oiled machine. This maneuver required incredible discipline. One mistake could throw the entire legion into chaos. One of the lesser-known aspects of the Principes was their role as mentors. They would often train with the Hastati during peacetime, passing on their combat experience. This created a continuous cycle of knowledge transfer that helped maintain the legion's effectiveness across generations. Their fighting style was more methodical than the Hastati's aggressive charges. They used their superior equipment and experience to wear down enemies who had already faced the initial onslaught. It was like a deadly chess game, where patience and technique often proved more valuable than raw aggression. Now here's something to think about. Imagine you're a Principes commander. Your Hastati line has just fallen back through your ranks, exhausted from their initial assault. The enemy is approaching, and you have to decide how to engage them. What would your strategy be? Pause this video right now and share your battle strategy in the comments below. Would you launch an immediate counterattack while the enemy is pursuing the Hastati? Or would you hold your ground and let them exhaust themselves against your better-equipped forces? Remember, you also need to consider the Triarii behind you, your veteran backup that you hope you won't need to use. This is the kind of tactical decision that Roman commanders faced regularly. If you're fascinated by these strategic challenges of ancient warfare, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Legacy of Empires. We're constantly exploring these incredible moments in military history. The Principes represented the perfect balance in the Roman military system, experienced enough to be reliable, yet still adaptable enough to handle the changing conditions of battle. They were the steady hand that helped guide Rome's armies to victory after victory, creating an empire that would last for centuries. Their legacy lives on in military organizations today, where experienced mid-level operators continue to play a crucial role in bridging the gap between raw recruits and veteran commanders. In many ways, the Principes showed us that in warfare, as in life, it's often the middle ground that holds everything together. When we talk about the Triarii, we're speaking of living legends, the elite veterans of the Roman legion. These warriors, typically over 30 years old, were the final line of defense, Rome's ultimate tactical reserve. They weren't just soldiers. They were the embodiment of Roman military excellence, each man carrying decades of battle experience. Let me paint you a picture of a Triarius. Imagine a warrior wearing the finest armor money could buy, carrying a long spear called a hasta, different from the shorter weapons used by other legionaries. These men were usually the wealthiest among the common soldiers, able to afford the best equipment. Their armor often included bronze greaves to protect their shins, a sign of their elevated status. Here's something fascinating about the Triarii. They fought differently from their younger counterparts. While the Hastati and Principes used the famous Roman short sword, the Triarii maintained an older, more traditional fighting style. They fought with long spears in a manner similar to the Greek phalanx. This wasn't just tradition, it was tactical brilliance. By the time the enemy faced the Triarii, they'd be exhausted from fighting through two previous lines, only to face a completely different fighting style. The Triarii had a unique battle stance that has captured historians' imagination for centuries. They would wait for battle, kneeling on one knee, their shields planted firmly in the ground, spears at the ready. Picture 1,200 veterans, perfectly still, watching the battle unfold before them. The psychological impact on both friend and foe must have been incredible. There's a saying that survived from ancient Rome. It has come down to the Triarii. Res ad triarios rediet in Latin. This phrase became a common expression meaning to use your last resort. When the Triarii stood up, everyone knew the situation was dire. They were Rome's insurance policy, the final card in a commander's hand. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about the Triarii wasn't their fighting ability, it was their discipline. These men had to watch younger soldiers fight and potentially die, maintaining their position until given the order to engage. Imagine the mental strength required to stand firm while watching your comrades battle, knowing that if you're called upon, the situation has become truly desperate. Each Triarius was also a walking library of military knowledge. They had survived countless battles, seen various tactics, and understood the ebb and flow of warfare in a way that only experience can teach. Many of them had fought across the known world, from the forests of Germania to the deserts of Africa. Their role wasn't just to fight, they were living examples for younger soldiers to aspire to. Every Hastati and Principes knew that if they survived long enough and proved their worth, they too might one day join these elite ranks. The Triarii represented the pinnacle of Roman military achievement, a position earned through years of service, countless battles, and unwavering dedication. What's particularly interesting is that the Triarii rarely saw combat, and that was exactly the point. Their very presence was often enough to steady the nerve of younger troops. They were the embodiment of Roman military might, a reminder that behind the front lines stood centuries of experience and unwavering resolve. The legacy of the Triarii lives on in modern military thinking. Today's special forces and strategic reserves owe much to this ancient concept of keeping your most experienced soldiers in reserve, ready to turn the tide of battle when all else fails. In many ways, they were the original special forces, the elite unit that could snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. These veterans were more than just soldiers. They were the living embodiment of Roman military tradition, the final guardians of Rome's legacy, and a testament to the power of experience over youth in the art of warfare. Now, let's unveil one of history's most brilliant military innovations, the Roman legion's battle tactics. Imagine a massive chess game, but instead of pieces on a board, you have thousands of highly trained soldiers moving in perfect coordination. This wasn't just warfare, this was military artistry at its finest. The Roman battle formation was like a deadly dance, with 3 distinct acts. Picture this: the Hastati stand in the front line, arranged in a checkerboard pattern. Behind them, the Principes wait in a similar formation, but offset, creating corridors between the units. And finally, the veteran Triarii kneel in the rear, their spears ready, watching and waiting. The genius of this system lay in its flexibility. When battle began, the Hastati would launch their pila, those devastating javelins, at the approaching enemy. Here's a fascinating detail. Each soldier carried 2 pila, and they would throw them in rapid succession. Imagine thousands of these deadly projectiles darkening the sky, followed immediately by the charge of young, energetic troops. But here's where it gets really interesting. If the Hastati couldn't break the enemy, they wouldn't fight to the death like many ancient armies. Instead, they'd execute a brilliant maneuver, falling back through those pre-arranged corridors between the Principes units. This wasn't retreat, this was tactical rotation. The Principes would then close ranks, presenting the enemy with a fresh line of experienced soldiers. The exhausted Hastati would reform behind the Triarii, ready to support if needed. This rotation could happen multiple times during a battle, constantly presenting the enemy with fresh, energetic troops. Think about the psychological impact on the enemy. They've just fought through one line of Roman troops, probably feeling confident, only to face another, more experienced line. And if they managed to push through the Principes, they'd still have to face the dreaded Triarii, the elite veterans who fought in an entirely different style with their long spears. One of the most remarkable aspects of this system was its ability to conserve energy. While other armies would commit all their troops at once, the Romans always had fresh soldiers ready. It was like having 3 different armies in one, each capable of taking over when the others needed rest. The Romans also employed another clever tactic that often goes unnoticed. The gaps between units weren't just for orderly retreat. They were also perfect for allowing tired soldiers to step back while fresh ones stepped forward, even within the same line. This meant that every enemy soldier was potentially fighting against fresh Roman troops at all times. But perhaps the most impressive aspect was the level of training required to make this work. Every soldier needed to know exactly where to move, when to advance, and when to fall back. They had to maintain formation while walking backward through corridors of troops, all while potentially under enemy pressure. This wasn't just training. It was choreography with lethal precision. The whole system was designed to be greater than the sum of its parts. The Hastati's enthusiasm, the Principes' reliability, and the Triarii's experience complemented each other perfectly. It was like a well-oiled machine where every component had its crucial role. This tactical system proved so effective that it dominated Mediterranean warfare for centuries. Even after the Romans met new types of enemies with different fighting styles, their flexible system allowed them to adapt while maintaining their core strengths. From the forests of Germania to the deserts of Egypt, this battle formation helped build an empire that would last for over 500 years. The legacy of these tactics lives on today. Modern military units still use concepts of depth, reserves, and tactical withdrawal that the Romans perfected 2,000 years ago. In many ways, the Roman legion wrote the book on organized warfare, a book that military commanders are still reading to this day. It wasn't just about having better soldiers or weapons, it was about using them in the most effective way possible. The Romans understood that victory often belongs not to the strongest army, but to the one that best coordinates its different elements into a single, unstoppable force. If there was one factor that truly set the Roman legion apart from every other ancient army, it wasn't their weapons or their tactics. It was their unwavering discipline and masterful organization. While other armies relied on individual warrior prowess or sheer numbers, the Romans built a military machine where every soldier was a perfectly fitted cog in an unstoppable mechanism. Think about this. In a world without instant communication, without modern training methods, the Romans managed to create a standardized fighting force that could operate effectively from Britain to Egypt. Every legion, regardless of where it was stationed, followed the same procedures, used the same commands, and maintained the same high standards. This wasn't just impressive, it was revolutionary. The Roman approach to military discipline began with training. Endless, relentless training. Soldiers would march 20 Roman miles a day, carrying 60 pounds of equipment, often building a fortified camp at the end of each march. They wouldn't just walk. They would march in perfect formation, maintaining exact distances between ranks and files. During these marches, their officers would deliberately lead them through difficult terrain, across rivers, up steep hills, all while maintaining their formation. Here's something fascinating. Roman soldiers didn't just train for combat. They were also engineers, builders, and surveyors. Each legionary was expected to be able to build fortifications, construct bridges, and maintain roads. This versatility meant that a Roman legion wasn't just a fighting force. It was a mobile city, capable of creating its own infrastructure wherever it went. The Romans had a saying, "We are more afraid of our centurions than of the enemy." These officers maintained discipline through a mix of respect and fear. Punishments could be severe. A soldier who fell asleep on watch might face execution, not just for his own sake, but because his negligence could cost hundreds of lives. But it wasn't all about punishment. The Romans created one of the first merit-based military advancement systems in history. Any soldier, regardless of his background, could rise through the ranks if he proved himself capable. This created a powerful motivation to excel and maintain discipline. Your next promotion could always be one good decision away. Organization extended to every aspect of legion life. Each unit had its own medical staff, logistics officers, and administrative personnel. They maintained detailed records of supplies, payments, and personnel. Think about how remarkable this was. 2,000 years ago, they had created a bureaucratic system that would rival modern military organizations. Let me share an incredible detail about their organizational skills. Every night, no matter where they were, a legion would build a fortified camp following exactly the same layout. This meant that any soldier, even in complete darkness, could find his way to any part of the camp because every legion's camp was identical. This standardization saved lives countless times when camps were attacked at night. The results of this discipline and organization were staggering. Roman legions could march farther, fight longer, and operate more efficiently than any other army of their time. They could build roads and bridges that would last for thousands of years. Some are still in use today. They could adapt to any terrain, any enemy, any situation, because their training and organization gave them a flexibility that other armies couldn't match. This system proved so effective that it would influence military organization for the next 2,000 years. Even today, modern armies use principles of unit organization and training that would be familiar to a Roman centurion. When we talk about military discipline and organization, we're still, in many ways, speaking the language of the Roman legion. The true genius of the Roman military system wasn't just that it created great soldiers, it created a great army. Individual warrior cultures like the Gauls or Germans might produce fiercer fighters, but they couldn't match the coordinated power of a Roman legion working as one. This wasn't just an army, it was perhaps the ancient world's greatest lesson in the power of discipline and organization. In the end, it was this combination of iron discipline and meticulous organization that allowed Rome to build and maintain an empire that would last for centuries. They showed the world that in warfare, as in life, the whole can be greater than the sum of its parts, if you have the discipline to make it work. As our journey through the Roman legion comes to an end, let's reflect on what made this military force truly extraordinary. We've explored a military system so advanced, so sophisticated, that it would shape warfare for over 2,000 years, and in many ways continues to influence military thinking even today. Think about what we've discovered. 3 distinct classes of warriors, each with their unique role. The energetic Hastati, young soldiers eager to prove themselves in battle. The reliable Principes, experienced fighters in their prime. And the legendary Triarii, the veterans whose very presence could change the course of battle. Together, they formed a fighting force unlike anything the ancient world had ever seen. But the Roman legion was more than just its soldiers. It was a testament to what humans can achieve through organization, discipline, and innovation. These weren't just warriors, they were engineers who built roads we still use today, architects who created fortifications that would stand for centuries, and pioneers who developed military techniques that armies still study. Remember that fascinating saying we discussed earlier? It has come down to the Triarii. This phrase outlived the Roman Empire itself, becoming a symbol of using your last best resource. It's just one example of how deeply the Roman legion has embedded itself in our cultural memory. When we look at the legacy of the Roman legion, we see it everywhere. Modern military unit structures, training methods, even the way armies build temporary bases, all these can be traced back to Roman innovations. They showed us that the true strength of an army lies not just in its weapons or numbers, but in its organization and discipline. The Roman legion didn't just conquer territories, it spread civilization. Wherever the legions marched, they brought with them Roman engineering, architecture, law, and culture. The roads they built to move their armies became trade routes that connected distant lands. The fortifications they constructed grew into cities that still stand today. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the Roman legion was its ability to adapt and evolve while maintaining its core principles. For over 500 years, it remained the most effective fighting force in the Western world. Think about that. 5 centuries of military dominance. No other army in history has managed to maintain such superiority for so long. As we close this chapter of history, remember that the story of the Roman legion is more than just a tale of military might. It's a testament to human ingenuity, to the power of organization and discipline, and to the lasting impact that well-designed systems can have on history. But this is just one of countless fascinating stories from the ancient world. History is filled with remarkable tales waiting to be discovered, and we're here to uncover them all. What empire, battle, or historical figure should we explore next? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this journey through Roman military history, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with that friend who's always fascinated by ancient mysteries and historical revelations. Hit that subscribe button to join our growing community of history enthusiasts at Legacy of Empires. And don't forget to ring that notification bell. You won't want to miss our next historical adventure. Remember, understanding our past helps us better comprehend our present and shape our future. Every like, comment, and share helps us bring more of these incredible historical stories to life. Until our next historical journey, this is Legacy of Empires, reminding you that the greatest stories ever told are the ones that actually happened. See you in our next adventure through time.